Humans have a long history of developing inventive ways to hurt each other. There's seemingly no end to the horrifying torture devices that people have conceived. Whether involving rats, spikes or boiling oil, the worst execution methods ever invented prove that humans have mastered the art of torture and death. Here are the list of 7 worst torture methods employed by humans. Number 1. Rat torture. The Rat's Dungeon, or Dungeon of the Rats, was a feature of the Tower of London alleged by Roman Catholic writers, from the Elizabethan era. A cell below high water mark and totally dark would draw in rats from the River Thames as the tide flowed in. Prisoners would have their alarm excited, and in some instances have flesh torn from the arms and legs. During the Dutch Revolt, they have used a method where a pottery bowl filled with rats was placed open side down on the naked body of a prisoner. When hot charcoal was piled on the bowl, the rats would gnaw into the very bowels of the victim in an attempt to escape the heat. Number 2. Execution by elephant. Execution by elephant was a common method of capital punishment in South and Southeast Asia, particularly in India, where Asian elephants were used to crush, dismember or torture captives in public executions. The animals were trained and versatile, able to kill victims immediately or to torture them slowly over a prolonged period. Most commonly employed by royalty, the elephants were used to signify both the ruler's absolute power and his ability to control wild animals. The sight of elephants executing captives both horrified and attracted the interest of European travelers and was recorded in numerous contemporary journals and accounts of life in Asia. Number 3. Brazen Ball. The Brazen Ball, also known as the Bronze Bull, Sicilian Bull, or Bull of Phalaris, was allegedly a torture and execution device designed in ancient Greece. Perolaus, or Perillus, of Athens invented this idea and proposed it to Phalaris, the tyrant of Acragas, Sicily, as a new means of executing criminals. The bull was said to be hollow and made entirely out of bronze with a door in one side. According to legends, the brazen bull was designed in the form and size of an actual bull and had an acoustic apparatus that converted screams into the sound of a bull. The condemned were locked inside the device, and a fire was set under it, heating the metal until the person inside was roasted to death. Some modern scholars question if the brazen bull ever really existed, attributing reports of the invention to early propaganda. Number 4. Impalement. Most famously used by Vlad the Impaler, 15th century ruler of Wallachia, which is present-day Romania. The act of impalement has a long, grim history. While images tend to depict people skewered through the midsection and then held aloft, in a manner that would almost certainly bring about a rapid death, the real process was a much longer, horrifically drawn-out ordeal. Traditionally, the stake would be partially sharpened and planted, point up, in the ground. The victim would then be placed over the spike, as it was inserted partway into the rectum or vagina. As their own body weight dragged them further onto the pole, the semi-greased wooden stake would force its way up through their body, piercing organs with an agonizing slowness as it eventually penetrated the entire torso, finally tearing an exit wound through the skin of the shoulder, neck or throat. Number 5. Iron Maiden. The Iron Maiden is a torture device, consisting of a solid iron cabinet with a hinged front and spike-covered interior, sufficiently tall to enclose a human being. Despite its reputation as a medieval instrument of torture, there is no evidence of the existence of Iron Maidens before the early 19th century. There are, however, ancient reports of the Spartan tyrant Narbi using a similar device around 200 BC. For extortion and murder. The Abbasid dynasty leader is said to have created a wooden oven-like chest that had iron spikes for torture, which would ironically be used, during his own imprisonment and execution in 847. Number 6. Breaking wheel. The breaking wheel or execution wheel, also known as the Catherine wheel or simply the wheel, was a torture method used for public execution primarily in Europe from antiquity through the Middle Ages into the early modern period by breaking the bones of a criminal or bludgeoning them to death. The execution wheel was typically a large wooden spoked wheel, the same as was used on wooden transport carts and carriages, often with iron rim, sometimes purposely modified with a rectangular iron thrust attached and extending blade-like from part of the rim. The primary goal of the first act was the agonizing mutilation of the body, not death. Often sharp-edged timbers were placed under the convict's joints. In the second act, the body was braided into another wooden spoked wheel, which was possible through the broken limbs, or tied to the wheel. The wheel was then erected on a mast or pole, like a crucifixion. After this, the executioner was permitted to decapitate or garrote the convicted if need be. Number 7. Death by boiling. Death by boiling is a method of execution in which a person is killed by being immersed in a boiling liquid. While not as common as other methods of execution, boiling to death has been practiced in many parts of Europe and Asia. Due to the lengthy process, death by boiling is an extremely painful method of execution. Executions of this type were often carried out using a large vessel such as a cauldron or a sealed kettle filled with a liquid such as water, oil, tar, or tallow, and a hook and pulley system. Boiling as an execution method was also used for counterfeiters, swindlers and coin forgers during the Middle Ages. We hope you liked the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to us.